Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're going to decode a really dense, utterly fascinating framework that completely bridges the gap between hard physical science and esoteric spirituality. Honestly, if you've ever looked up at a rainbow and thought, is there a deeper, maybe even hidden architecture to those colors? Well, you're in the exact right place. We are breaking down a visual map known as the harmonic spectrum of the rainbow. It's essentially this elegant, unified model that attempts to tie together light, frequency, vibration, and even human consciousness into one neat package. To kick things off, let's just anchor ourselves with the source's profound opening premise, because it really sets the philosophical stage for everything we're about to explore. The quote is, "When white light is refracted, the one becomes the many, that the many may remember they are one." Now, that isn't just a basic lesson in optics, it's a huge metaphysical statement. It suggests that division, like a solid beam of light suddenly splitting into a colorful rainbow, isn't just some random accident. It's a purposeful scattering designed to help us ultimately understand unity. Because this system traverses from hard physics directly into mystical concepts. Here's a roadmap for breaking it down. 1. The prism of one light. 2. The electromagnetic context. 3. Mapping the physical frequencies. 4. The metaphysical connections. 5. The philosophy of vibration. And 6. Returning to unity. And wow, this brilliantly illustrates the complete tapestry we're working from today. Just notice the sheer intricacy of this highly organized grid. Up at the very top, we've got the vast cosmos and the prism of light. Then, straight down the middle, there's this meticulously categorized breakdown of the 7 colors of the rainbow, linking their wavelengths to musical notes, chakras, and even sacred geometry. I know, it is a lot to take in all at once, which is exactly why we're going to tear it down into totally digestible pieces. Starting off with Section 1, the prism of one light, focusing on white light and the rainbow. We're starting at the very top of the framework, exploring this macro concept of white light splitting into the visible spectrum. This is really the origin point of the whole system. See, according to this framework, white light isn't just a purely physical phenomenon. It's actually framed as the ultimate source of unity that holds all potential. Before a beam of light ever hits a prism, it literally contains every single wavelength packed in there together. The source describes this pristine state as unity and source. It's just a beautiful metaphor, really, for infinite possibilities existing all at once, long before they're ever manifested or observed. So the crucial takeaway here is how the source defines the rainbow itself. It's not merely refracted moisture hanging in the sky. No, it's treated as a literal bridge between our visible reality and the unseen metaphysical realms. The framework calls it a spectrum of light, sound, and consciousness. It actually posits that each color you see is a distinct frequency, and more powerfully, that each of those frequencies is a doorway to a completely different state of being. Let's move on to Section 2, the electromagnetic context. This is where we fit in. All right, moving from the philosophical stuff over to the physical. Before we get into the individual colors, we really need to understand exactly where human perception fits into the grand scheme of things. The chart proposes a framework where our everyday visible reality is directly juxtaposed against the absolutely massive, unseen electromagnetic spectrum. It explicitly reminds us that the visible spectrum is just a small part of the infinite. I mean, we're completely surrounded by gamma rays, X-rays, infrared, and radio waves right now. We can't see them, but they're for sure there. It's a pretty humbling reminder of our limited human perception, and it perfectly sets up the idea that beyond the eyes, the mystery continues. Now, what's genuinely wild here is how the system isolates the exact, incredibly narrow band of physical light our eyes can actually process. Everything we see, every painting, every single sunset, every face we've ever recognized, exists strictly between the wavelengths of 380 to 750 nanometers. To put that into perspective, this tiny, tiny window is literally the only part of the infinite spectrum that registers to our biology as color. Now for Section 3, mapping the physical frequencies. Time for the hard numbers. Let's look at how this builds, starting with the purely physical measurements of those colors. We're zooming all the way from the cosmic scale right down to the data. Extracting just the hard scientific numbers from the source, we can clearly see the inverse relationship between wavelength and frequency. So as we move from red down to violet, the physical wavelength decreases. Red is relatively long, spanning 620 to 750 nanometers, while violet is super short at just 380 to 425 nanometers. But wait, check out the frequency. As that wavelength gets shorter, the frequency in terahertz drastically speeds up, climbing from the 400s in red all the way up into the high 700s in violet. By isolating those exact physical numbers, we see the very real mathematical progression of the light spectrum. Red represents the absolute lowest, slowest frequency of visible light at roughly 400 terahertz. Violet, on the other hand, represents the highest, fastest frequency we can possibly see, maxing out right near 790 terahertz. And honestly, grasping this physical, mathematical escalation is absolutely crucial before the source starts introducing its spiritual counterparts. Which brings us to section 4, the metaphysical connections. Let's go beyond the physical. So, now that we've got the physics and the math down, we can really explore the chart's dense metaphysical correlations. And this is exactly where the framework flexes its creative and spiritual muscles. It assigns an approximate musical note and a specific bodily energy center, or chakra, to every single color. It's literally blending audio, visual, and spiritual scales. Look at the structure of this. Red, our lowest frequency color, completely aligns with the musical note C and the root chakra at the base of the body. Then, as we move up the spectrum, orange to D, yellow to E, we are simultaneously moving up the musical scale and up the energy centers of the human body. The whole thing culminates with violet perfectly aligning to the note B and the crown chakra. Drilling down even further into the human experience, each color is also precisely mapped to psychological and spiritual themes. This illustrates a really clear evolution of consciousness. Red is completely grounded in basic survival, bringing stability and vitality. But as the frequency increases, so does the complexity of the theme itself. Green is the heart, centered entirely on love and connection. By the time we reach the high-frequency violet, the theme shifts entirely to spirituality and unity, bringing in keywords like surrender, oneness, and transcendence. The source actually refers to this specific mapping as the harmony of the 7. It essentially suggests that these 7 colors mirror a musical octave perfectly. Think about it. Just as 7 primary notes can be played to create literally infinite musical combinations and symphonies, these 7 primary rays of light create infinite combinations of visible reality. It's basically an octave of light, harmonizing the eyes exactly the way music harmonizes the ears. All right, section 5, the philosophy of vibration. Let's link science and spirit. Let's just step back from the grid for a second and look at the underlying logic chain that makes this entire interconnected system possible. Because you might be wondering, how on earth does a terahertz measurement translate to a human emotion? Well, under the section titled The Harmonic Truth, the source provides this exact 4-step transitive logic to explain how physical light ultimately equates to creative consciousness. Step 1, light is vibration. That's just a physical fact. Step 2, vibration is sound, frequencies moving through a medium. Step 3, sound is consciousness, the interpretation of those physical waves. And finally, step 4, consciousness is creative. It's this fascinating cascading sequence of logic that perfectly stitches the scientist right to the philosopher. And because of that specific 4-step logic, the source beautifully concludes that a rainbow is essentially a visual representation of an invisible cosmic song. Honestly, it's an incredibly poetic takeaway. When you see a rainbow, you aren't just seeing refracted light, you're seeing the visual footprint of a universal vibration. The chart grounds this entire theory in the ancient Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, as within, so without. This is a completely foundational concept in esoteric philosophy. It argues that the macrocosm of the entire universe is reflected perfectly in the microcosm of our very own bodies and minds. So as the spectrum divides up there in the sky, it divides identically within our own internal energy centers. The one light shines through every single hue, both above and below. Finally, we reach section 6, returning to unity. The journey completes the circle. We've reached the conclusion of the source's narrative arc, zooming all the way back out to where we started with the white light. The system states that the ultimate goal of understanding all these divisions is the return. It specifically points out that the color violet returns us to unity, completely closing the circle. The entire journey through the colors, through the chakras, through the musical notes, it's really just a process of remembering. Each color is a facet of the one light. And when we align with all of them, we remember our intrinsic wholeness. We realize that we ourselves are the rainbow. This culminating thought is just the perfect summary. It really emphasizes that whether you're looking at the physical terahertz, the musical notes, or the esoteric chakras, it is all one perfectly harmonized system. Nothing is missing. Every color has a place. Every note contributes to the chord. Every part belongs to the whole. It is such a powerful message of inclusion and total cosmic order. And that brings us to the end of our explainer on this incredible harmonic framework. I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder based on the system we've just unpacked together. Next time you look up after a storm and see a rainbow stretching across the sky, will you just see refracted light? Or will you see the visible song of the invisible? Thanks so much for learning with us today, and definitely keep looking for those hidden structures in the world around you.